Секунд. Пані та панове, мене звати Андрій.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Andriy Shevchenko, and on behalf of Ukraine Media Center team, I'm glad to welcome all journalists here at Ukrinform. Welcome all journalists who tell the world the truth about our fight for freedom. And our today's guest is Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, spokesman of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Oleksandr, what are the news from the front? Good afternoon, dear friends. I'd like to share with you information about the Russian military aggression against Ukraine. Information as of noon today. So the enemy has been carrying out an offensive operation in the eastern area of operations. The main aim of the enemy is still the same, which is surrounding the group of Ukrainian defense forces and taking full control over territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, as well as Kherson oblasts, and ensuring resilience of the ground corridor to the occupied territory of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. Russian troops have been gradually increasing the intensity of their offensive action in eastern Ukraine in all directions at the same time, and the highest activity at the moment is observed in Slobozhanщина and Donetsk directions. In addition, there have been signs of the aggressor preparing for even higher intensification of combat activities. This is supported by some preparations of the enemy. For example, in Central Clinical Hospital of the Balaklia district, beds are prepared and an additional field hospital has been prepared. And in the Russian city of Rostov-on-Don, in the territory of military clinical hospital, there have been additional refrigerations developed to keep dead bodies of the dead military. Several words about the operational situation. The enemy's rocket and aviation strikes continue against both military and civilian targets all over Ukraine. In particular, the tactical aviation of the air and space forces of Russia has flown at least 33 times to hit targets in Kharkiv and Donetsk oblasts. Russian long-range Tupolev 22 M3 bombers have flown 32 times, including at least 8 times for bombing Mariupol. We cannot exclude that sea-based cruise missiles will be based from Black Sea by Russian ships. Now information by areas. In Slobozhanщина, the enemy's group from the 6th Army of Coast Guard, Baltic Fleet, Western Military District and Northern Fleet continues aviation strikes against Kharkiv and shelling Kharkiv by artillery. On Izyum direction, the enemy has been using the 1st Tank Army, 20th Army of the Western Military District, 35th Army and 68th Army Corps, as well as paratroopers, is carrying out offensive action in Izyum-Barvinkovo and Izyum-Slaviansk directions. Russian occupational forces continue their illegal activities in occupied territories in Kherson, in Kharkiv Oblast. In particular, from Kupiansk and other towns and villages, people have been forcefully deported to Russian Federation. The aggressors also disseminate fake information that Kyiv, Kharkiv and Zaporizhia are taken. In Donetsk direction, units from so-called 1st and 2nd Armed Corps, as well as the 8th Army of the Southern Military District, 5th Army, and the 95th Tank Division have been carrying out active combat action along the whole front line. The aggressor has been making aviation strikes, air strikes, and artillery shelling. The enemy has focused its key efforts on the offensive action in Liman, Severodonetsk, Popasna, and Kurakhove directions in order to take full control over Rubizhny and Popasna and combat reconnaissance towards Liman, Slavyansk, and Barvinkove. The enemy also continues airstrikes against Mariupol. The invaders have concentrated their efforts on blocking our units around Azovstal steel factory. Also, some part of Russian troops has been moved to Popasna and Novopavlivsk directions. In Zaporizhia, around Zaporizhia, the enemy has been rearranging its groups, increasing its firing capacity in order to continue offensive towards Veliky Novosilka. In Tavria direction, the enemy continues its demonstrative actions and maneuvering in order to fool around Ukrainian troops and prevent them from moving to other directions. Also, the enemy continues to replenish its reserves, fuel and lubricants. In South Bug area, the enemy has been using units from its 8th and 49th armies as well as 22nd Armed Corps, has been acting in order to improve its tactical situation. The enemy continues firing against our units, rearranging its troops, increasing its firing capacity, strengthening its engineering equipment, and trying to replenish its ammunition. In Volyn and Polissa areas, there are no significant changes in the situation. Some units of Belarusian armed forces continue implementing assignments to strengthen the border of Belarus with Ukraine in Brest and Homel oblasts. At the same time, we cannot exclude that the enemy would conduct some provocations in order to accuse Ukrainian armed forces. Also, there is still a threat of rocket strikes by the enemy against military and civilian infrastructure in Ukraine from Belarusian territory, from the Republic of Belarus. Also, as our intelligence has learned, in an airfield in Brest Oblast in Belarus, 130 kilometers from its border with Ukraine, there have been 6 airplanes of Russian tactical aviation. Also in Mohyliov Oblast, 170 kilometers from Ukrainian border, there has been a division of Iskander tactical missiles deployed. In Siversk area, the enemy continues shelling against areas bordering Ukraine. In particular, there has been artillery shelling around Kindrativka, Katerinivka, Svarkova, and Bilokopitovo. It is being done in order to restrain Ukrainian defense forces, and we expect that the aggressor will continue such tactics. Now about Black Sea and Sea of Azov areas of operations. Black Sea Fleet ships in Black Sea and Sea of Azov continue rocket strikes against Ukrainian territory, as well as doing reconnaissance and providing fire support to their troops in the coast. Also in the Black Sea, at the moment, there have been 3 carriers of cruise missiles, caliber-type cruise missiles. Their total launch capacity is up to 20 missiles, 20 rockets. According to the information of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, over the last day, air defense units of the Ukrainian Air Forces and Ukrainian Ground Forces have hit 10 targets, including 1 airplane and 9 tactical UAVs, Orlan-type UAVs. In Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, over the last day, our brave warriors have repelled 14 attacks by the enemy, destroying 14 tanks, 7 artillery systems, 28 armed vehicles, and 14 cars and trucks. The total losses of the enemy have been shown on this slide. Today, the General Staff already published those data. So that's all information I have by this time. Thank you for attention. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to heroes. Any questions? You're welcome. Your microphone doesn't work, I think. No, it works. Sorry, the interpreter cannot hear. The interpreter cannot hear the question. The interpreter cannot hear the question, sorry. We know that the Russian Federation has already been carrying out so-called hidden mobilization in some regions of Russia and actively hiring mercenaries for combat action in Ukraine. Also, so-called mobilization continues in temporarily occupied towns and villages of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. There, people are just caught on the street. They're given some uniform and sent to the front line. We are aware of that too. But whether Russia is to declare a full-scale mobilization will definitely depend on the military action in the eastern area of operations. So if the enemy fails to achieve its planned goals in the nearest future, this scenario is completely possible. We cannot exclude it. One more question. Sorry, just a moment. Please use my microphone. One more question. At the moment, Ukrainian military is trained to use new weapons received from our foreign partners. What is the situation with this training at the moment, and how many Ukrainian people are involved in that? Thank you for this question. This is a relevant question. The preparations training continue. Of course, we are not to discuss any scale and type of those activities, but I would like to reassure you that our servicemen will rather quickly master the military equipment provided by our partners, and that equipment will be used according to its intended purpose to destroy Russian invaders and liberate occupied Ukrainian territories. Any more questions? You're welcome.
Me? My name's Frank Langford. I'm with National Public Radio from the U.S. I have a specific question. Are any of the American howitzers in action yet? And if not, when will they be put into action?
I understand your question. First of all, I would like to thank the US government and partner countries helping Ukraine in its fight for independence. Your question is very specific, but as you understand the nature of those activities and all fine nuances of the defense operation in Ukraine are not to be discussed. But I'd like to reassure you that all weapons to be provided to Ukraine will be used in an effective way for our defensive operation. So I cannot tell you specifically whether a particular type of weapons has been used or not.
I was reading the defense minister's statement 2 days ago on his Facebook page, in which I think he effectively said, I just wanted to check this, that the Ukrainian military is becoming effectively a NATO army, and that it will be defending the eastern flank, and it is now shifting from Soviet-style weapons to NATO quality, NATO caliber weapons. Can you talk a little bit about that? That seemed to be his message. I think it's a very important point.
Currently, in this Russia-Ukraine war, Ukrainian armed forces use the full potential of weapons and equipment. Both those weapons which have been used by the Ukrainian armed forces and weapons provided by our partner countries. We need weapons, unlimited quantities of weapons, because the Russian Federation has been using its weapons against us without any restrictions. It is running a completely dishonest war against us and uses types of weapons which Ukrainian armed forces don't have. So we do need weapons, and without any limitations, actually. And I can add that in this particular post on Facebook, the Minister of Defense quoted that example of 155 caliber in artillery, which was not used by the Soviet army, but it is being used by NATO allies. And according to the Minister of Defense, it was told that the Ukrainian military has been now mastering that caliber to actively use those weapons in military action. That's it, that's the situation. Any more questions? My last question will be this. It's about Mariupol. Have there been any signs that the intensity of combat action is lowering by Russian invaders, so that some progress would be possible in arranging humanitarian corridors from that besieged city? As of now, the situation there is mostly the same. Russia has been blocking all humanitarian items from Ukraine. There are rocket strikes and bombing against the city and the territory where Russians block our units around Azovstal. The only thing is we don't see any ground assault, but artillery shelling is there and air bombing and rocket strikes are there by Russian military. They continue. So the situation does not change there as yet. So, any more questions?
Question about the Donbass. You gave us a lot of examples of things that are happening in individual places. But overall in the Donbass, are the Russians making progress or are you holding them back? How would you describe that?
I can describe the situation as follows. There are certain parts where the enemy has already taken control of. That's not a top secret. But you have to understand that there has been rather intense combat action. Our units run position defense and maneuvering defense there. Some towns and villages may change hands. Certain towns and villages or territories are not of strategic importance for Russian army, so there is no offensive action there. But as of today, we see signs that Russia has been increasing its troops in eastern area of operations. They are increasing the numbers of their units, and they want to take as much Ukrainian territory as possible. As of now, their main goal is to get to administrative boundaries of Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts, as well as Kherson Oblast. Thank you. Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, spokesman of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, thank you for this information. Now we complete our schedule for today. All journalists are welcome to monitor our announcements. Thank you for working with us. Stand with Ukraine.